It's been a while since we've seen any major update to the Division story, but we've been assured a number of times that there is something coming. What and how big this will be, only the developers know at this stage. Anyone following me for a while will know that I like to ponder these things. So if you're willing to humour me for the next few minutes, I'm going to run through a few scenarios of where the story could be taking us next, starting from the most out there idea, leading down towards the more likely direction we could see. I must note that these are purely speculation based on what we've seen from the narrative direction so far, mixed in with a good amount of my own over-ambitious imagination. I need to remind everyone that I have absolutely no collaboration with the studio working on future content, or any of the developers involved. Or do I? No, I really don't. I should know better than to start these sort of rumours. People get very excited. Before I get into it, let's briefly summarise where the story is left off. Aaron Keener is dead. Keener's known cells of rogue agents are also dead. The BTSU leader, Barden Schaefer, has been captured by the SHD. We've now heard from the leader of the Black Tusk, Natalia Sokolova, and that they had a hunter working with them. New York's most senior agent, Faye Lau, went rogue, joining the Black Tusk. She then killed President Ellis and blamed it on the Division. Faye was then killed by the Division. Probably. Maybe. I haven't exactly been quiet about my disappointment regarding the direction Aaron Keener's story took in the Division 2. In the first game, he was a highly intelligent mastermind who, after feeling betrayed by the government, was always several steps ahead of the SHD, meticulously planning out every step of the way towards bringing down what he saw as widely spread corruption within the government. In the Division 2, it was almost like he'd lost his mind. He came off as more of a cheesy Bond villain, with an over-the-top ludicrous plan that really made no sense and certainly didn't mesh well with his previously established character. Maybe it was a case of the villain of the story starting to be sympathised with, which may have not been quite the direction the writers wanted it to go. I know I was certainly on Team Keener. While the Division may not have been written by the man himself, the narrative direction was certainly heavily influenced by the Tom Clancy style, and the Keener we met in the Division 2 was actually more in line with how Clancy has approached villains in the past. In the cutscene where Keener dies, we can see the player agent and Kelso, who is talking to him, trying to understand what he'd just done with his watch, when suddenly Isaac announces, "Rogue agent deceased." The agents then leave the scene, without so much as even checking his pulse. While I struggle to believe that what we saw in that cutscene was everything that had happened, that Keener's body was just left as is, that a character of his importance wouldn't have just been extracted by the JTF later on, to be examined, it certainly wouldn't be the first time that a villain has been brought back from the dead. Hornet is the most obvious example of this. But Hornet was a minor character at this stage, and him suddenly being alive didn't really have that much impact on the story. A major character like Keener, coming back from the dead, just seems a little bit comic book and overused. However, I can see both sides of this argument. We're definitely supposed to believe that he's dead, but there are a few pieces to the story that could explain how he could still be alive, that actually isn't too unrealistic regarding the narrative direction. The first question, do we know that we actually killed Keener in the first place? We certainly killed someone who sounded like Keener, someone who we assume looked like Keener. I'm not going to go down the path of body doubles or surgical manipulation or anything, but there is the possibility that the man who died on the dock wasn't actually the man himself. I mean, our agents have never actually met Keener face to face. Agents that had either joined him or were killed. We've only heard from him through recordings and grainy videos and echoes, which, to be fair, he looked quite different in a number of them. However, before I get too crazy with all of this and start digging down into conspiracy theories, let's jump back into the story. Before we landed on Liberty Island, we confronted Keener's rogue agents, one of them being Theo Parnell. Theo was a tech genius, and while we were actively hunting him down, he proved time and time again that Isaac couldn't be trusted. He showed how easy it was to manipulate the AI into doing, reporting, and saying whatever he wanted it to. This is a big part of how Theo's special tech, the decoy, works. Following on from Theo's death, Keener, or whoever we were fighting, showed again how easy it was to control Isaac by having it relay anything he wanted it to, straight into our earpieces. It's entirely possible that Theo and Keener had orchestrated the whole plan. That we, the agents, were meant to catch up with Keener on the island and take him down, or at least think we had. So what was the point in faking his death? To buy himself some time, similar to what he did on the West Side Piers, to create a distraction while he continued on with his plans. Except, through having everyone think that he was dead, the Division and the Black Tusk would no longer be looking for him, turning their complete attention on each other. Perhaps things were getting a little too hot for him after his betrayal of the Black Tusk, and this was his contingency plan to get the heat off his back. And the only other person that knew of this was Theo, which is why Keener was happy to let him die at the hands of the Division. From here, Keener may be continuing to build his network of rogues. When you think about it, we've only really met so many so far. There are likely hundreds, if not thousands more of them out there. Don't get me wrong, I'm not really a fan of the whole "surprise, he isn't dead" idea, but I certainly wouldn't be upset if Keener comes back into the picture. He was definitely one of the more interesting characters of the story, and this could actually help us understand the unusual direction his character took at the end there. But if they do go down this path, they have to do it right, because personally, and I know for a lot of others, this could break the immersion of the story if it was done half-assed. There are a number of holes in the story that would need to be plugged in order to have this work. I touched on this a while ago, but having gone through it again recently, I still think it has merit, and would still probably be my preferred direction that the story could take, though certainly not the most likely. At the end of the Faye Lau manhunt, everything just stopped. We didn't get a cutscene, there wasn't some epic yet strangely concerning speech from Kelso or Paul Rhodes. We didn't even receive a notification from Isaac to say that she was deceased or eliminated. Obviously the whole ending to this manhunt was pretty disappointing, but the sudden announcement from the Division development team that went on to explain that this manhunt was originally meant to be the last major update to the game could be the reason that we were left hanging after taking down Faye. I believe that there was meant to be more to the story, but because the game was now suddenly being built on again, they changed how it was going to play out. What if we were supposed to capture Faye, similar to what we did with Schaefer, but due to the apparent unexpected decision to extend on the Division over the next year or so, they potentially cut out the final cinematic to be expanded on later. Faye locates President Ellis and executes him, blaming it on the Division. Faye is found and taken down by the Division. Following this fight, a couple of comms were revealed. These were both recordings from Faye directed at Roy Benitez and Paul Rhodes. She was apologizing for what she was about to do. Why would she even bother recording these if she was in fact a full-blown rogue agent defecting against the Division? What these recordings tell me is that she has come to the conclusion that the Division is fighting a losing battle, and that the only chance they had was to take them down from the inside. Faye had become an undercover rogue agent. Faye hasn't lost hope in the government, and she still strongly believes in the Division's mission of saving what remains. But over time, watching this determined and well-funded new enemy and the remaining agents around her either being killed or turning rogue, joining the Black Tusk ranks, it was only a matter of time before the agency fully collapsed. The only one left in the government is corrupt and has joined the other side. The chain of command is broken. It was up to her to take him down before he was used to bring the general populace over to the other side. Faye would go undercover and eliminate Ellis after gaining enough trust to get close to him. She had to do this alone. Firstly, she didn't know who she could trust anymore, and those she could, like Benitez, wouldn't allow her to do this on her own. But she had already lost enough loved ones, and didn't want to be responsible for more of their deaths on her hands. The reason she blamed Ellis's death on the Division agents was to keep her cover from being blown. After all, Schaefer had been captured, but she had since learned that the true force behind the Black Tusk was much bigger than originally thought. Natalia Sokolova was still out there, and while she is still around, the threat to the country will never disappear. Yes, this means that the Division has now been burned, likely now to be flagged as a rogue organization. But as there are so few of them left, and the fact that they're only losing ground to this invading force, it was a sacrifice she had to make. Plus, she's likely come to the conclusion that she can't do this alone. Through doing this, she may be able to bring more of them undercover into the BTSU to help with the mission. Faye Lau decided that it was up to her to do what no Division agent was able to, and that the only way to do this was to go rogue and join up with the Black Tusk, taking down Ellis and the rest of its leadership from the inside. Faye had no problems with the fact that she could die while on this mission. Other than taking her chance and eliminating the leadership, I don't think she had planned her next steps and was forced to make some quick decisions on the fly, including the blaming of Alice's murder, and she certainly wasn't expecting to be captured alive by the Division. Due to the SHD now being labelled as hostile, there is the potential for a little bit of a rift between the JTF and the Division. Faye has been held in an undisclosed location where she has been interrogated by an understandably angry Alani Kelso. Given Kelso's generally less flexible demeanour, Faye takes the beating and says nothing. She has a plan, but it involves keeping the undercover situation on a need-to-know basis. All Faye says is that she wants to talk to Benitez. Eventually Kelso organises a meet-up with Benitez. Although he is JTF, he knows Faye better than anyone else. If anyone's going to get her to talk, it's him. Faye tells him everything, and that this is far bigger than they could have ever planned for. But she isn't done, and she needs his help to finish the job. Benitez believes her, and on top of this, provides her with a means to escape. At this stage, the BTSU has no idea that she's been captured, but she couldn't simply walk back in and join the Black Tusk ranks after disappearing for so long. She needed something that would not only lower the chances of questions being raised, but something that would bolster her position into the leadership. Benitez further assists by providing the location and guard schedule of Barton Schaefer. He would be a ticket back in. After breaking Barton free, Faye rejoins with the Black Tusk. Although Natalia Sokolova is still skeptical, Faye's position within the organisation has been somewhat elevated. However, she is quickly put to the test. Kelso has brought in a number of agents to recapture Faye and Schaefer. She launches an assault on Faye's last known location, where they once again meet face to face. The following weeks see a number of conflicts between Faye and Kelso. Over time, more agents are brought into Faye's circle and are made aware of her plans. But Kelso is a stubbornly loyal individual. She fights for what she believes is right. All she sees is an agent who was in a once prominent position, turning her back on the people. The conflict continues, but now the battle is between rogue agents, fighting for different sides. In time, Kelso would come on board with the plan, and from here they are able to orchestrate a number of skirmishes that would solidify Faye's position. Together, Kelso and Faye would effectively control the Black Tusk operations, one from the opposing side, keeping up the illusion, and the other from within their ranks. With every conflict, Faye gains more trust from Sokolova. She would advise Kelso on opportunities to discover intel and break convoy lines. Yet Faye would be able to continue taking locations of interest for Sokolova while keeping collateral damage to a minimum. Over time, they would be able to work towards bringing down Natalia's organisation, including her potentially secret force of super soldiers, the Hunters. As much as I'd like to see these ideas become the future direction of the game, we need to think about what we've seen from the studio over the last couple of years. They're still working on Avatar, and they now have the Star Wars project. But this isn't to say that they don't have the resource to work on these as well as the Division. Ubisoft is a huge company, and often use multiple studios to work on games. But there has certainly been a shift in the way that they've been handling the franchise. Like they aren't able or willing to put in the same sort of energy. This is coming out in the way that they communicate and market the game. It's true, we're seeing an expansion of the Division universe into different areas, but the base game has been sitting in limbo for quite some time now. And then there was this communication saying that they hadn't originally planned to take the story any further. Obviously, I hope this will change with the release of the new content, and that new life will be sparked into the game. But given the small amount of time, in game development terms, since they changed their minds and decided to add more content, we need to be realistic as to what they can actually add to the narrative direction, if anything at all. I don't expect any new twists or surprises, and rather that it will continue the current story trajectory that we left off from. So based on this knowledge, I expect that we'll be seeing the following direction. Aaron Keener is dead. Faye Lau is also dead. The SHD, now marked as a rogue agency, may have a few struggles to begin with, but ultimately their goal and direction hasn't changed. Under Kelso's guidance, the agents will continue their fight against the Black Tusk. They are now aware of Natalia Sokolova and her involvement and leadership of the PMC. The following months will see the agents learning more about her movements and goals behind this invasion. But for now, their JTF support has been significantly reduced, while they proved themselves as more than just another rogue agency. Isaac's proven limitations have forced the SHD to reconsider their reliance on the AI. Although until changes can be made, agents are still required to utilize it in order to keep most of their basic functions and technology active. This could lead to several events where agents are forced to rely on their intuition rather than what is being relayed through the earpiece and Scantech lenses. While all of this is happening, Vitalia has finally begun work on the bioreactor, working towards the mass production of the antivirals. The now minor factions of True Sons, Outcasts, Hyenas, and even the Cleaners and Rikers will continue to play a small part in the story as the Black Tusk leadership utilize their numbers to slow down the division. I also think we'll be seeing more of Keena's rogue agents, potentially even another group of non-Keena affiliated rogues. I suspect we'll be hearing more about the Hunters too, not just their involvement with Natalia and the Black Tusk, but a little more around their origins as well. However, I don't think we'll be learning everything about them. They will continue to be shrouded in mystery. I by no means think that we'll be seeing a wrap-up of the story in any way, but the story could be at the most resolved point that we've seen in the last 6 years. If we can just pop back to the announcement from the dev team for the third time in this video, it's worth noting that although they said they had originally planned to end support, this was for the Division 2. This isn't to say that they were planning on stopping support for future additions to the main game. For all we know, the Division 3 is well underway, but delays have meant that they have decided to add a few more updates to the current game. But I don't think this means we'll be seeing the third installment anytime soon. I'd say it was still at least a couple of years away. Another thing that we need to remember is that developer Trick Dempsey not so long ago was interviewed by IGN. And in this article, Trick clearly states that the Division story is far from over. So while I may not sound overly optimistic around the updates we'll be seeing soon, I still have faith that the Division story has a lot more in store for us. It may just be a little further away than we'd like. However, while I play a number of other games too, particularly for a more rounded PvP experience, I still haven't managed to find another game that even comes close to what the Division offers, as far as gameplay, immersion, story, weapon handling, and, well, the list goes on really. Whatever does come out, I'll be waiting here eagerly. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. For the most part, this was just my take on the possible directions the story could take. While writing this, I actually came up with a number of other ways the story could turn, because to be fair, it's pretty open right now. There are plenty of options that could be worked from. Let me know, do you have any thoughts around the future of the story? Anyway, this has ended up being a little longer than I'd planned, so I'll cut it off here. A huge thank you to all of the channel members that have continued to support me, even during this time of fewer uploads. It really means a lot. We're getting a bit more of a routine with the new baby in the house, so I'm hoping I'll be able to step this up a little more soon. Cheers!